wanna do now is making it last. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends forever, strengthening the ties that keep us together. Mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, friends forever, strengthening the ties that keep us together.
It's time for another conversation. And this is the podcast where it's all about helping you to have better relationships. This is Making It Last, and I'm Noreen Daly. And with me this time around is Dr. Grace Kelly. She's an author. She wrote the book Grieve If You Must, and that should give you an idea of what we're going to talk about today. Before I tell you exactly what we're going to talk about, who is Dr. Grace Kelly?
Well, Dr. Grace Kelly is currently a professional counselor. I have studied the whole matter of grief and bereavement, but Dr. Grace Kelly is also one who has been affected by grief. And I think that's the platform on which I'd like to have this conversation this afternoon. I have studied locally and internationally, and I've been working with persons with grief and other kinds of issues for too long, over 20 odd years.
Wow. Our topic, and of course, it's all about helping our listeners to answer this question, or if not, just at least tickle their mind. The one that we will be delving into this time around is how to grieve without disconnecting with the living. Or in other words, how then do you grieve so that it doesn't negatively impact the relationships around you?
That's a very important question. And I would say for a long while now, most persons feel that grieving is just something that happens, whether overnight or it just supposed to. Oh, well, he's dead, or he has left you, or she has left you, and you should just get over it. Grieving is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the common examples I usually use is if I ask you to hold your breath for as long as you could. How long could you hold your breath for? And would you just keep holding your breath because I say hold your breath? Now, if you really have given up on life and you really do not want to live any longer, I could have you hold your breath for eternity. So if you want to live, you need life, you need breath. So you breathe. So breathing is to life as grieving is to pain. And as long as you are alive, there will be pain. But it's how you deal with it. There's also a process that one goes through when it comes on to hurt.
Okay.
And while there's basically you would say a book, knowledge of it, or it's you have your maths and what they call those equations and so on. You must understand some basic rules.
Okay.
If you are going to do mathematics, you have to understand how to count, how to multiply, how to divide, and so on. So let me just use a few seconds and share with you what the process is like. When someone is hurt, the first thing that happens to them is that, wow, why me? How could this be? So they would have gone into what we call the denial stage.
Okay.
And in that stage, you have persons asking questions about even the validity of their life and the validity of a relationship, whether or not it was meaningful to have had this relationship. But what one needs to appreciate is that each relationship is designed in a certain way to teach you something. And not every relationship is designed to last forever, because there are some relationships should take you at a certain level, and then you move on.
Okay, the whole idea of reason, season, and lifetime. Then.
Right.
Yes.
All right, so if at that first stage is like, why me? That's the denial. Then there's a part where you get very angry. Could it be because I am? And then all the brain has a way of seeking at all times to present the negatives. Doesn't give you, unless you train your mind to think positive. Most times one feel hurt and anger towards the situation or the person or whatever it is that hurt them.
Okay.
So that's the second phase of anger. You're feeling, I want to wring this person's neck. I want to do this. Then the next level is bargaining. Okay, well, if this is what really happens, what if? And the what if questions come in there and you start bargaining. And if it is a broken relationship, one may say, well, give me a chance.
Okay.
I will want to change my ways. I want to do this. But at that time, don't make any lifetime decisions, because if you're hurting, your brain doesn't allow you to make sane decision if you haven't gone through the process of grieving.
Okay.
So be careful what kind of commitments you make at that stage.
Okay.
And after that, the person may move into a deeper level of what we call depression. And is life really worth it? Could it be that, this is the end of whatever it is, whether the life or the relationship total and so on. And that's where a lot of persons would have walked out of a relationship that probably had potential for growth.
Okay.
Because the pain, one has to appreciate the pain, and you have to go through the pain in order to experience true healing.
Okay.
So at that stage, when one walks away, one would not be getting a chance again to know whether or not this could have been a possible, good relationship. Then after that, if you're able to go through the stages sequentially, or sometimes it's a roller coaster, you move from one stage to the other. But if you are able to go through it, you reach a stage of acceptance. Okay, well, this is where I understand who I am, why I'm here, my purpose. And I read recently, I not remembering now the author, but the statement, it says there are the two most important days in one's life is the day you were born and the day you no, not when you die. When you understand your purpose. Those are the two significant days. So if you're able to go through the roller coaster or smooth the process of grieving and you reach a stage of acceptance, then you move into what we call a new normal.
Okay.
So you accept your life without that person or without that situation so that you can move. How do you go through this without hurting? I guess that's a question that was originally asked.
Yes, but what I really want us to focus on, because I'm listening and I'm saying, yes, I can then apply this to, if there's a breakup, some sort of breakup. And breakup, a lot of time people think only male, female. But no, breakup, if it is that you've been close to somebody and there's a disconnection, it means that it's a breakup. But specifically in terms of I've lost a loved one, the person is now dead, would these stages then apply? And then if so, then how then do I move on?
Yeah, it definitely applies in death.
Okay.
And more so, and a lot of persons, interestingly, think that the grieving process only belongs within this spheres of death, when death happens.
Okay.
But the grieving process happens on a colleague.
Okay.
Has to move on.
Okay.
And you mentioned having that close connection. The grieving process happens, but for death, it is most definitely associated with it.
Okay.
What one needs to do is ask permission to grieve or take the time to grieve.
Okay.
A lot of us, we don't.
Okay.
So it is okay to say to somebody, listen, I just lost my loved one. I would appreciate you understanding that I am not open for the favorite, whatever that was. If it is that you probably had lunch with the individuals at work or even at home and you feel you want to be by yourself, you are permitted to do that. So let them know how you're feeling. I am not thinking as I ought to at this stage. So please allow me some time before you ask me to sign this contract for whatever. And a lot of persons may take that simple. But when you're grieving, it's recommended do not make life-changing decisions. All right? And you need space. emotional space. You need actual physical space where you can grieve without hurting others, because remember your emotions now are all mixed up. And let's use a family where there was a father and this father has died or has walked away, and the children are grieving. You're going to find a lot of acting out behaviors because they don't understand how to handle the emotions that they are feeling, that overpowers them at a point where they look at the table and the food is there to be eaten. It's the best that you probably have ever given them, but they don't want it. Why? Because daddy isn't here to enjoy it.
Wow.
The possibility, when we were growing up, I remember we call him grandpa. We always rush to see, especially when fish is served. We always rush to him, and he does something with us. He gave us the head and the tail of the fish, and he said, no, you get the head and from the head to the tail, so go. And every time that fish was served after he died, you want to have that moment, but he's not there. So ask permission. Adults who need to appreciate the hurt, the anger, the tantrums, it's real. You will have to guide, if you are the adult, the children. And if they are fighting, having some quarrels or stuff like that, you have to guide the process. If you were to take a few seconds just to reflect on the time of death in and around a family, have you noticed that those are times when a lot of family feud happens?
Yes.
And a lot of issues.
Yes.
So there is a lot of breaking up, and sometimes even killing happen. Sometimes also within that time, because some persons need the comfort of someone else, a lot of sexual assaults and abuse happen, even among family members, unintentionally, because they are providing support and care and whatever, and they get a little bit too close. So it complicates the situation. And as I mentioned, complicated situation, there are different types of grief. There is a normal, everyday grief that one may experience.
Okay.
And it's expected. There is one where it's unexpected. There's one that is called complicated, because before this hurt is healed, another pain happens, and then it becomes complicated, and another one disenfranchised. And disenfranchised grief, just like in business, you are disenfranchised because something is taken away from you. You cannot grieve in public for this person because nobody knows that you should be grieving. So you are disenfranchised. And if you grieve openly, people would, so you have to just hold that pain. Wow. Now, people need permission to grieve, and it's because of the other complications that happens in terms of the reaction or the response of the body. It is okay for you to give the person permission to go through a process. So grieving is a process. It's not an action or an activity. It's a process that you go through.
I am thinking that there is just so much more that we could talk about, that you've basically just, I think, literally just scratched the surface. I mean, you've taken us through the stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, and of course, sometimes it's a new normal. But I think if somebody's listening and they get nothing else, what they should get from this is that you should take the time to grieve, whether or not it is the death of a loved one, but you should just take the time. And I think one of the best pieces of advice I got when my father died some years ago is that a friend of mine said to me, do not let anybody dictate to you how you should grieve. So, as we are wrapping up, Dr. Kelly, is there anything else you'd like to just tell our listeners about the whole idea of ensuring that when you grieve, you do not negatively impact the relationships around you?
Okay, what to do without negatively impact the relationship? The best piece of advice that I would give is be real about your feelings. And there's what we call mindfulness. Be mindful of those around you. If you have the time and it's okay, tell them how you're feeling. Be open. Be realistic. And remember, grieving is a process, and it's like your thumbprint or your fingerprint. It's as unique as you are, and it's not to be rushed. Take time. You have permission to grieve. And if you want to live, you breathe. If you want to overcome a pain, you grieve. And never, as I'll say that to you now, again, you have said it well, never allow anybody to dictate to you how you should or whether or not you should. It is as normal as life, and as long as you're breathing, there'll be issues, there'll be challenges, and you need to take the time and be mindful of those who are around. Ask permission if you wish, but take the time and grieve.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kelly.
My absolute pleasure, Ms. Daly.
It was a conversation about a topic that not often enough we actually spend the time on. How then can we grieve without negatively impacting the relationships around us? Not just in terms of the death of a loved one, but just some of the relationships sometimes when there's a disconnection. This has been Making It Last with your host, Noreen Daly. Until next time.
You loving me, I loving you. Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives,